What's good, y'all? And welcome to part 2 of my standings predictions. Of course, in this video, we're going over the Western Conference. If you're interested in my Eastern Conference standing predictions, make sure you check out the videos on the channel. But I'm going to be doing it in the same format as that video. I'm going to be putting them in order on who I think is going to be the 15th seed, 14th seed, 13th seed, all the way up to the number 1 seed. But I also separated them into tiers because the Western Conference is super deep, and one game can really be the difference between the 4th seed and the 8th seed. So to show some of that movement and that closeness, I separated them tiers and by seeds. And before we get into it, I want to remind you guys to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. I'm going to be talking about all of these teams here in the Western Conference, but if you want to hear me talk more about your specific favorite team, make sure you check out all my preseason preview videos where I deep dived into each individual team. Well, without further ado, let's take a look at the tier 4 teams in the Western Conference. Here in tier 4, I have the too early tier. This is seeds 13 through 15. And as you see, as the 15th seed, I have the Portland Trail Blazers. The 14th seed, I have the Utah Jazz. And the 13th seed, I have the San Antonio Spurs. So as the tier title says itself, I do think that this year is way too early for these 3 teams I included. The Trailblazers, Jazz, and Spurs are all really early in their rebuilds, and I expect it to look like that in their record this year. The Spurs, I think, are getting a little bit too hyped up because obviously Victor Wembanyama is one of the best prospects we've seen in a long time. They added vets like Chris Paul and like Harrison Barnes, which I like both of those pickups for them. They also have other good pieces like a Devin Vassell or a Jeremy Sohan. But again, I do think that it is too early, so I put them in the too early tier. If the Western Conference wasn't as deep and didn't have so many competitive teams, I could maybe see the Spurs sneaking into the play-in tournament, but as you'll see later on in the video, the teams above them are just clearly better in my eyes. And while I do have the Blazers and the Jazz as bottom feeders out west, I think that, again, just kind of shows you how deep the Western Conference is. If you put both those teams in the East, I think they're closer to the 10th seed than the 15th seed. But here in the West, I just don't think that these young teams really have a chance to compete. They have good pieces in place of the rebuild, and I think it'll be exciting to watch these young guys grow throughout the season. But when you're looking wins and losses, again, it's too early. Moving on to the tier 3 teams, I have the play-in hopefuls. In this tier, I have seeds 8 through 12, and these are the teams that I think are going to be fighting to make it into the play-in tournament. At the 12th seed, I have the Los Angeles Clippers, 11th seed Golden State Warriors, 10th seed Sacramento Kings, 9th seed New Orleans Pelicans, and 8th seeded Houston Rockets. I legit think that there are 12 teams this year that are trying their hardest to make the playoffs. Only 8 make it, and only 10 make the play-in tournament. As you see here, the 2 teams that I have missing out on the play-in tournament as a whole are the Los Angeles Clippers and the Golden State Warriors. So I've been working on these standings predictions for a few days now, and I set the Clippers as that 12th seed because I just didn't really trust the health of Kawhi Leonard, and if he was hurt, it would just be all on James Harden, basically. And unfortunately for the Clippers and for Kawhi Leonard, and honestly for NBA fans as a whole, that reality did happen. Kawhi Leonard is now out indefinitely with his knee, and obviously, like I was thinking before, if he wasn't on the court, this Clipper team really lacks depth, lacks scoring. I just don't really like the roster construction without Kawhi Leonard, and it seems like they're going to be without Kawhi Leonard for the foreseeable future. And I've seen some people say that James Harden is just going to revert back to his heliocentric style of play and really carry this team to victory. I don't think that he's going to be able to do that. I think defensively, this Clippers team is pretty solid. Offensively, though, they're really going to struggle because it's basically James Harden, Norman Powell, and spot-up guys. Like, I don't really see where else they're getting their shot creation from. I did put them in tier 3, though, because they do have James Harden, and I could see a maybe weird chance where they are a little bit of overachievers because of him and because of their pretty solid defense on paper, but I can't really put them anywhere higher than that right now. And that's kind of similar thinking with the Warriors on why I have them as the 11th seed and missing the play-in tournament as well. I feel like it's going to be a lot on Steph Curry, a lot on Draymond, and beyond that, they don't really have too much. I will say I like their supporting cast a lot better than what the Clippers have right now, and obviously they have their 2 top guys healthy, where the Clippers do not. And in the preseason, they've had some pretty good showings from guys like Jonathan Kuminga or Buddy Hield. Kyle Anderson looks like he's been able to remaster his shot and get that down. So I could see a world where the Warriors are in the play-in tournament, but right now I have them just barely on the outside looking in. The teams that I do have making the play-in tournament, though, are the Sacramento Kings at the 10th seed. You might think this is a little bit low for them, but I do think that defensively they're going to struggle a lot. It's basically Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis, and then that's it. Their addition of DeMar DeRozan, though, should definitely help their super-powered offense around him. De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, even Malik Monk coming off their bench. And I do think that's going to be enough to carry them to the postseason, but I don't really expect too much for them. And my one thing holding back the Pelicans is the fact that they don't really have a high-quality center that I trust on their roster. They've talked about having Herb Jones act as the center in a lot of lineups, and I do not like the sound of that. Daniel Tice has been okay. Yves Messi has been okay. But unless they go out and trade for a center, I really would struggle having a lot of faith in the Pelicans. And the team that I have on the top of this tier at the 8th seed is the Houston Rockets. I am super, super high on the Houston Rockets. I think on paper, their roster construction is damn near perfect. I mean, as you guys can see right here, I'm a pretty big fan of Şengün. I really feel like he can be the main guy on a playoff team. I think playing through him from the post with his scoring, his playmaking, athleticism, finesse, he's got damn near the full package at the center position, and I really like him as their main piece. But they also have perimeter guys that can bring you some playmaking and scoring, like a Fred VanVleet with his shooting and playmaking, Jalen Green, the 3-level scorer and the shot creator that he is. They have great depth coming off their bench too, arguably some of the best depth in the entire NBA, and I think that their defense is going to be really, really good, led by guys like Dylan Brooks. Jabari Smith Jr. I think is a super underrated defender. Off their bench, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason. They have loads of talent on this roster, and I'm super high on them. I do think that they're going to exceed a lot of people's expectations. Now moving on to tier 2, I have the playoff favorites, and in this tier I have seeds 5 through 7. At the 7th seed, I have the Los Angeles Lakers, 6th seed Phoenix Suns, and 5th seed Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm going to start by talking about the Timberwolves, who I have at the top of this tier at the 5th seed. If I'm being honest, before the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, I would have had them in the tier above this, in that number 1 tier, which we'll get to in a second. But with them swapping out Cat for Julius Randle and DiVincenzo, I do think it kind of caps out their ceiling for this season. Just looking at it surface level, I think that Karl-Anthony Towns is a better fit for the Timberwolves and what they're looking to do than what Julius Randle can bring. I like how Cat is a much better off-ball player, a much better shooter, and I just feel like a player like that in that style and that skill set fits alongside better with their main guy of Anthony Edwards, who loves to get to the paint, help spread that out for him, and is going to be that off-ball guy for when Ant has the ball. He creates all the mismatches, and then he can kick it out, capitalize like that. Julius Randle is not that kind of player. He is a guy that loves to get his own shot and will definitely help them adding shot creation so Ant doesn't have to do so much, but in that off-ball role, I don't really know how much I really would like Julius Randle. He also is a much worse three-point shooter while being around the same style of defender. Neither Cat or Julius Randle are really above average defenders in my eyes. So I think just the offensive fit is a little bit clunky. I do really like the addition of Dante DiVincenzo. As a Knicks fan, I had the big pleasure of watching him last season. His three-point shooting, shot creation, playmaking, defense. He brings the full package, honestly, and him coming off the bench for Minnesota, I think, is going to be huge. I really love the depth that Minnesota has, and I do think that they're still going to be a very good team, and that's why I put them at the top of this tier. But I do think they took a step back in, being a championship contender. When you look at their matchups between some of the other teams that I have above them, I just don't really like them as much as I did when they had Cat on the roster. But the other two teams that I have in this tier are the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Lakers. Both of these teams have the top tier star power. Both of them arguably have the top two duos in the league. The Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis. The Suns with KD and Devin Booker. And I really love that star power for both of these teams to keep them afloat and keep them in the top half of the play-in tournament. And even beyond that, I could definitely see situations where these teams exceed what I'm expecting. The one thing kind of holding me back from putting them in that upper echelon tier, though, is the depth on these teams. I feel like they could kind of fall into the hole of relying too much on their star power, and that could kind of come back and bite them in the ass. But don't get me wrong, I do think that the Suns and the Lakers are both really, really good teams. I feel like if you put them in the Eastern Conference, they would be way better than the 6 and 7 seed. I feel like they would be closer to home court advantage in the first round than to be in the play-in tournament. It's just the luck of the draw, I guess. You know, they're in the Western Conference and they have to go against those stacked teams. I am very high on both these teams, and I think both of them got better compared to last season. But when you just look at the rest of the competition, they have to be just this low. And now for the Tier 1 of Western Conference teams, I labeled it championship contenders, and I have seeds 1 through 4 in this one. At the 4th seed, I have the reigning Western Conference champions, Dallas Mavericks. The 3 seed, I have the Denver Nuggets. The 2 seed, Memphis Grizzlies. And the number 1 seed, OKC Thunder. Man, oh man, does it feel good to see the Memphis Grizzlies back on the top of the Western Conference. I just love the fact that they are going to be healthy coming into the season. And hopefully are going to be healthy throughout the season. I know they're already dealing with some knick-knack injuries to guys like G.G. Jackson or Vince Williams. Both of those guys I think are going to be really important coming off the bench for this team. But I'm talking about Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, all 3 of these guys coming into the season healthy. Jaren Jackson Jr., he was healthy last year. He's still going to be healthy this year. And the addition of their big rookie, Zach Edey. I'm gonna be honest, I completely am flipping my script here on Zach Edey. Coming into the draft, I was super low on him. I didn't really expect him to translate well into the NBA. After watching him in the Summer League and the preseason, he's going to translate, for sure. That's on me. I was wrong. I feel like 2 years ago when the Grizzlies had their last fully healthy season and they made it to the playoffs, their main struggle was the fact that they didn't really have a presence down low at the center position. They were running Jaren at center, who, you know, defensively is solid. He's got decent size, but rebounding is just not his strong suit. Now they're bringing in Zach Edey to just gobble up all of those rebounds. And he's also a great rim protector and defensively has looked very solid in the preseason. He's been able to move his feet in the pick and roll. He's been able to use just his big size and length to gobble up steals and blocks and all of that, disrupt shots. I'm really high on Zach Edey now. Again, completely flipped the script. And then when you add that with a Ja Morant, who's as electric as he is, one of the best point guards in the NBA. People really forgot about Ja. He's going to remind everyone this season, I'm sure. Also, Desmond Bane, I'm really high on. And this team also has so much depth. I mentioned Vince Williams and G.G. Jackson are probably going to start off the season hurt. But once they come back, they're going to be added to a bench lineup of guys like Luke Kennard and Santi Aldama and Brandon Clark. They have a lot of bodies on this roster, and I think that they're going to have one of the best defenses in the NBA yet again. Their offense is going to be pretty solid as well, and I expect them to have a very dominant regular season. And speaking of dominant, the team that I have as the number 1 seed is the OKC Thunder. I really feel like they're going to come out here and just steamroll the Western Conference almost. I do think as a whole the standings are going to be pretty tight, but I do think that the Thunder are going to have like a 3 to 5 game lead in the 1 seed, and I think that compared to everyone else, that's going to be a pretty big lead. They're super young, but last year they had experience of what it is to be one of that top tier teams in the NBA, so I don't think that that's going to hurt them, but I think their youth is just going to help them in the fact that night in and night out, they're going to be able to just kill. They're not going to have that mindset of just coasting through and just let's make it to the playoffs, let's conserve our bodies. They don't really have to worry about that. They're all like 27 and under. I think Alex Caruso is the oldest on the team and he's 30 years old. But it's not really rocket science. They were the number 1 seed last year in the Western Conference. They had a great offense, great defense, and now this offseason they did nothing but add Alex Caruso, who's going to help them defensively for sure, and add Isaiah Hartenstein, who's going to help them on both sides of the ball. Also, their biggest weakness last year was center and rebounding and rim protection. Now they're adding a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein. That's good in all of those while also being a great passer out the post. And I also have Denver at 3 because I don't think the KCP loss is going to hurt them too much. I think all in all, when you look at, they lost KCP, but brought in guys like Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric to come off their bench. Julian Strawther has looked amazing so far in preseason. I think that it's going to be a net neutral, if anything. I think that they still have the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic. They still have guys like Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. who complement Jokic perfectly. And then again, I'm pretty high on Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric. I think they're going to be able to keep their bench at least afloat or around average. I don't think they're going to have the worst bench in the league like we've seen in years past. So for all those reasons, I think the Nuggets are still going to be a very good regular season team and probably into the playoffs as well. And lastly, I have the Mavericks as the 4th seed here, coming off their finals appearance. I do think that they got better. Adding Klay Thompson is definitely going to help their offense and their spacing, which we saw was a big struggle once they made it to the finals versus the Celtics. And then I also like the guys that they brought in to kind of just smooth out the edges. Guys like Quentin Grimes, I think, can help as a two-way player. Najee Marshall, I really like what he can bring defensively for them, especially after they lose Derrick Jones Jr. And I think Luka is going to be coming for revenge. I think he's going to be hungry after coming up short in the finals. And I think that the Dallas Mavericks are going to try to return this year. So here it is, my official Western Conference standings for the 2024-2025 NBA season. Starting from the bottom, moving up, we have at 15 the Portland Trailblazers, 14 Utah Jazz, 13 San Antonio Spurs, 12th seeded Los Angeles Clippers, 11th seeded Golden State Warriors. Then making the play-in tournament, I have the Sacramento Kings, New Orleans Pelicans, Houston Rockets, and Los Angeles Lakers. The Phoenix Suns and Minnesota Timberwolves should be able to make the playoffs without going through the play-in. And the Dallas Mavericks, Denver Nuggets, Memphis Grizzlies, and OKC Thunder should have home court advantage in the first round. What do you guys think of my Western Conference standings predictions? Let me know in the comments below who you think I'm most wrong on. Am I super high on a team, super low on a team? Let me know in the comments below. This Western Conference was way harder to make than the East, so I'm up for all discussions. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.